Light and peace, brothers and sisters. Topic of discussion today is vampires. What is vampires, and do they really exist? I'm sure everybody all over the world have watched Hollywood movies, and they've seen movies on vampires, special human beings or special being that sucks humans' blood or even eat their flesh. They have some vampires that do that. But the question now is that do these vampires actually do exist? And if they do exist, how can we prove it? First and foremost, just to let everybody know, before I become a faithist, I used to get drained when I go to sleep. When I go to sleep, by the time I woke up, once I wake up, very tired. I am very tired. I'm like, I see something drain me overnight. I just couldn't get it. I just didn't understand what was doing it. Now, we're going to go to the OahspeCollegeUniversity for a minute and decode this to see how this came about. So just for you, some of you people that might go to sleep or you eat, as soon as you finish eating food, you feel like you should be energetic, but you're not. Something just drained you. You just feel drained. That's a vampire sucking your energy. That's a vampire sucking the life force of the food you've just eaten, or the food you've just eaten or you've drank. I'm going to go to OahspeCollegeUniversity for a minute and decode this. The book of Liquor, chapter 14, verse 10. The book of Liquor, chapter 14, verse 10. Verse 10. Spirits who inhabit mortals in order to live on the substance mortals eat and drink, and often absorbing the strength and life of mortals, shall be known as Oahspeans, vampires. Nevertheless, this shall not include fetus. You see what that verse 10 is saying? The spirits often absorb the strength and life of mortals, shall be known as Oahspeans. You see that? And it says in the very first verse, it says, spirit who inhabit mortals in order to live on their substance. Mortals eat and drink. You see that? So, yeah, it's saying that there are humans who are eating. As the humans are eating or drinking, there are spirits beside them, or spirits who have attached themselves to them, and they're absorbing the substance of what they eat. And now this example is a perfect example of some people. I'm not going to say some people, most people, they go to sleep and they see themselves eating or drinking. This is a perfect example. You know, that there's a spirit absorbing your food, absorbing the substance of your food. But you think that, you got spiritual problem. But, there's a lot of people who don't know. They can't explain this better. They don't know how to explain this. So they say to you, you have a spiritual problem, that it's a bad thing. The problem is a lot of religion churches, especially pastors and preachers, they never explain this to you. You go to church, you say you had a dream, or you had a dream and you see yourself eating food or drinking. But they say, oh, that's a spiritual problem, that you need spiritual deliverance. Of course, they give you the book of Psalm to read, and they tell you need to fast to God. You need to do a deep fasting to God, where you fast for 7 days without eating, But during that time when you're fasting, in your dream, you still see yourself. See, that's the thing. You still see yourself eating in your dream when you're still fasting to God. You see that? Stupidity. And people just keep on going back to these churches and place of worship and these temples. They have no answer. Yeah, you have OahspeCollegeUniversity decoding it for you. So, when you see yourself in sleep, or, you see yourself in your dream, that you see yourself eating or drinking, that's a vampire right there. That's what OahspeCollegeUniversity is telling you. It's a vampire doing it. I'm going to go to the book of Simta Amaj, chapter 2, verse 3. The book of Simta Amaj. The beautiful thing about Simta Amaj is she's a female Etherean Orion chieftainess. an amazing angel, because during that time was when Abraham rose, Brahma rose, Paul rose, and Iwanta rose. And most people are familiar with the name Abraham and Brahma. Abraham seems to be more popular. But this particular angel, Orion chieftainess, Simta Maj, came to rule us in the 23rd arc circle and for 2400 years, and that was around 5800 years ago all the way down to 3400 years ago. So if you're to do a timeline to get a timing about it, that's the beautiful thing about OahspeC. You could go backward to calculate when this happened, but in your King James Bible, you cannot. You don't even know what's going on. If you're to calculate starting from the year 1848 going backward, that was Simta Amaj came 5800 years ago, and ruled all the way down to 3400 years ago, and that's the Ark of Spita. Simta Amaj is she's a female goddess that ruled us during the Ark of Spita in the 23rd arc circle. And if you're to use the BCE and CE calculation, that would be 3953 BCE all the way down to 1553 BCE. So let's go to the book of Simta Amaj, chapter 2, verse 3, and see what Simta Amaj had to say about vampires. And I want you to listen to this carefully because this is amazing. Verse 3, book of Simta Amaj, chapter 2, verse 3. Verse 3. Simta Amaj continued. I listen to the voice of spirits. You see that? That's an angel right there. She could hear voices of spirits. She could hear them speak. Amazing. There's a lot of amazing things that angels can do in heaven. The angels traveling with the earth, a wanderer going about with nothing to do, said, "This is heaven." You see that? There's a wandering spirit, just traveling all around the world, and saying that is heaven to him or her. Because we got female angels. And in our world, we do that too. Some people say they want to take vacation, and their vacation is for them to travel around the world for 6 months. I'm going to continue. I'm on verse 3. An observer of mortals and of other angels said, "This is heaven." The fairies, the butterfly angels, the triflers that forever look into crystal water to behold their own form, said, "This is heaven." The rattling, deceiving angels who went and inspired mortals to falsehood said, "This is heaven." You see that? Now, I'm going to read that again. The rattling, deceiving angels who went and inspired mortals to falsehood said, "This is heaven." See, that's funny because there's a lot of Holy Spirits. There's a lot of deceiving angels pretending to be Holy Spirit, and they deceive people in the place of worship. This is where I'm going with the verse. I'm going to read now. Vampire angels that nest to in the atmosphere of mortals, largely living on their substance, said, "This is heaven." You hear that? I'm going to read it again. Vampire angels that nest to in the atmosphere of mortals, largely living on their substance, said, "This is heaven." Evil angels obsessing mortals for murder's sake, to make mortals burn houses and torture helpless creatures, said, "This is heaven." So I'm just going to read the part that we are concerned about, since the topic of discussion today is vampires. Vampire angels that nest to in the atmosphere of mortals, largely living on their substance, said, "This is heaven." So this here is like someone who lives in a house, and you've got provision of food in the house, and a vampire angel said, "Wow, this is great. I'm going to stay in this house and nest to on the atmosphere of that mortar." In other words, they're going to keep on feeding on the atmospheric part of the substance of what the mortars have in the house. Whatever food they have, whatever they eat, they're going to be on the house, and they're going to continue eating. So that house has become their nest, and they will not leave. This is what the book of Simta Amaj, chapter 2, verse 3 is telling you. So I'm going to go to the next verse because I'm learning to something. There's a reason why the topic of discussion today came forth, vampires. So, the OahspeCollegeUniversity just don't put a topic out there without a reason. One of our purpose is to lift people out of bondage. Now, there's a reason why this come, and the last chapter you see why, and then in my next topic you see the reason why the issue about vampire came about. Now, the book of Words, chapter 54, verse 18. The book of Words, chapter 54, verse 18. And from among the mighty host of darkness, the Judas, deep born in darkness, now pestering the people on earth, were hundreds of millions of vampires. Sorry, hundred of millions of familiars taken into fatalism. Vampire spirits, you hear that? Vampire spirits who suck the blood and the flesh of the mortals till the brain and heart are wide and mad, till the mortal is driven to nameless deeps of horrors, desperate with the foul obsession. Spirits who bring poison and horrid smell to afflict mortals. Spirits who delight to feed, here it is now, spirits who delight to feed on mortal flesh corrupted with scabs and running scars. Spirits who teach reincarnation and loss as the highest, most exalted heaven. You see that part where it says vampire spirits who suck the blood and the flesh of mortals till the brain and heart are wide and mad. You see that? This is from the book of Words, chapter 54, verse 18. And, you know, this is clearly telling you what the behavior of vampire spirits are. You know, they suck people's energy. That's what they do. And they suck flesh. Now, I'm going to go to the book of Judgment, chapter 1, verse 14. The book of Judgment, chapter 1, verse 14. Verse 14. Whoever desires the angels for profit's sake, and he has power in sages. Sages are humans who has the ability to have spirit create a form. In other words, if the human has a sages ability, then the spirit can take any shape or form they want. So they could appear to you as a bottle, they could appear to you as a house or sheep, they could appear to you as a human with wings. They could appear to you as whatever they want, because that human has that ability. Let me read on. Whoever desires the angels for profit's sake. I'm reading from the book of Judgment, chapter 1, verse 14. Whoever desires the angels for profit's sake, and he has the power in sages, give to him a band of Judas and vampires. You hear them? And give them a great power in signs and miracles. You hear that? So, and this is familiar when you go to churches or even go to parades where they do stuff. You do see prophets and preachers, pastors who claim to perform miracles. They say they do miracle. Now, if this miracle is true, what the OahspeCollegeUniversity is telling you is that they are under the inspiration and power of band of Judas. Judas are spirits of darkness and vampires that gives them great power in signs and miracles. You see that? You see? And what God is saying in the book of, let it be, let them have it, because there's a hand result to this, because most people want angels for profit's sake, not for resurrection's sake, not for peace sake, you see, but just for profit's sake. It baffles me how a pastor who preaches or a prophet who preach the word of the so-called God, and in return, in less than 1 month or in less than 2 months, they're rich. They have millions of money. They have a mansion, they have mansions, they have luxurious cars. How do they do it? But in any way, that's a topic for another day. But the book of Judgment, chapter 1, verse 14 is telling you that, they will get a band of Judas and vampires will be the one giving them the signs and helping them, assist them. Of course, in return, you know what they're going to do to you in heaven. The last chapter, and this is where I'm going to, this is the key word here. The book of Judgment, chapter 1, verse 16. Yeah, it is clearly. Yeah, it is, because this is why the next topic is going to come about. A lot of people don't understand why. And when I do my teaching, I always put things up for a purpose, for a reason, so that you could be relieved, so that you could release yourself from bondage. Verse 16, the book of Judgment, chapter 1, verse 16. To all men who feed on flesh, who feed on fish or flesh, you shall allow vampires to inhabit them. You see that? Now, and in fact, I would say 98% of people who's watching this video would not agree with this last chapter, the book of Judgment, chapter 1, verse 16 that I just put up. And to all men who feed on fish or flesh, you shall allow vampires to inhabit them. Now, the God that spoke in this chapter is interesting to me, and there must be a reason why. So what OahspeCollegeUniversity is saying here is that if you continue feeding on flesh or fish, flesh here is animal product. If you continue feeding on animal, the chicken, the pork, your beef, whatever as animal product that has flesh that we eat as human, that's considered a problem, because vampires and evil spirits will inhabit you. So you'll be under the inspiration of a vampire. Vampires will be living around you. You see? Now, why would God say this? And there's a reason why. And in my next video, purification is the first law, I will explain this in full details. Why you should not continue feeding on flesh or fish. Purification is the first law will be my next topic of discussion. And I'm just going to say a little bit about it, not over here, since this chapter came about. Think about it. If you feed on flesh and fish, and you have vampires all around you, so when you die, some of those vampires are going to be your friends in heaven. They're going to cling on you. They're going to continue trying to convince you to continue in their band. Now, the highest those vampires can go is second heaven. That's it. They can't go higher than that. You see that? So how do you rise out of second heaven if you still feast, if you still feed on fish or flesh? It's not possible. So purification is the first law, will be the next topic of discussion, because you need to purify yourself. You need to be in purification in order for you to rise to third heaven, and then from third heaven rise to the emancipated heaven. Emancipated heaven is the ethereal realm, is ethereal heaven, is the Nirvanian heaven, and you can't eat fish or animal in emancipation heaven. You could eat it in first heaven and second heaven, of course, because there's no purification in there. They have the organized first and second heaven. Those are for people who stop eating animals, and they begin to rise. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to stop this topic. This topic came about to explain to people that vampires do exist, and you see vampires in your sleep. They could be sitting beside you while you're eating your animal, your flesh, whatever it is you eat, and they're feasting on it, and you don't even know. And when you cross over, when you die, they're gonna continue with you. And that gotta stop. And vampires vampire do it most because they have the power to absorb the strength and life of human being, and they can feed on blood and flesh of humans. They have that capacity, they have the ability to do that. So I know Africans don't believe in vampire. They don't believe they don't believe they exist. They see it in Hollywood movies, but it's true, they do exist. In America, in this part of our world, in America where we live, we know it exists. Some people might say it's just a movie, but they do exist. And one of the reasons for you to know they actually exist is if you go to sleep and you see yourself eating food or drinking water, drinking something or eating something, then you have a band of vampires around you. You see that? That's how it works. Or when you wake up, you feel drained. You have no more energy. You're very tired, extremely tired. You got a vampire. Or while alive, while you're doing your lunch break, you finish eating and you feel like you should be very energetic after eating, but you're still tired. You got a vampire that had lunch with you. Light and peace, brothers and sisters. Bye bye now.